Welcome back, guys, to another Serious Angler podcast. Today, we are without Bailey. He's enjoying himself at a Sabres game. But we are here Monday Night Live, as always, and we are excited to bring on Josh. But first, Andy, how are you doing, man?
Good, dude. How are you? I know you have some craziness going on over there. It's a little frozen. It's been snowing for like the last 5 days.
Whew.
My truck is in the shop, so my boat's still in my driveway, and I got to get it to the in-laws. But other than that, we're doing all right. How's it going over there with you?
Good, man, dude. In Colorado right now, it is mild, dude. I think it seriously got to the high 60s today. It does not feel like winter. And I know we're going to be talking winter patterns fishing. Some of those fish are kind of actually starting to set up that way, but it's a different deal right now. It feels so warm out. It's kind of crazy, man.
It's just wild. Yeah, I mean, normally November we're like right about now we're sitting like mid 40s during the day, sometimes 30s. It's been like 28, 25, 40 with snow and wind every day. But they're still catching giant smallies if you can get out on the lake. But there's been like 3 to 4 footers every day. The Lake Erie is still 48 degrees. So
Wow.
there's still time left. Yeah, we'll catch them all the way to about 35. So we're going to be catching them probably through Christmas if I can ever find time to get out there.
Well, that's what you said too. This time of year, it's not even necessarily the weather. I mean, the lake's always open. It's just that there's so much more wind this time of the year that it's like one in 4 5 days where you can actually get out on the lake.
Maybe 1 in 7 or 8.
Wow.
So it's like even if I wanted to run guide trips, I can't because I mean it's unpredictable. I'd have to have people ready to go on a whim. And then at nighttime, it's getting down to 15 to 16, 17. My boat sits outside. So I run the risk of my lower unit freezing. So it's like, why even bother putting my boat in the lake? If I had a garage, I'd bass fish till I couldn't get out of the harbor. So
you need to get a garage.
Yeah, next house.
There you go. I like it, man.
Yeah.
Well, before we bring Josh in, I wanted to say a little something. I'm a huge fan of BTL, and it helped me really start the Business from the Bass Boat podcast and get connected even with you guys. It's been probably the, I don't know, what I've set my sights on as far as the podcast industry goes. They have been top notch the whole time. I've become friends with Matt through all this and wearing the hat and everything. But it was really cool to see kind of the emotion and the raw building phase, that everything that Mark went through from quitting his 9 to 5 in the corporate world. And to listen to that this morning, if you guys haven't checked out the Bass Talk Live episode today, you need to. I think it's the after Thanksgiving one or something like that. It's really cool to hear where that's all going and Matt taking the reins. And please listen into that because that is a really special thing. And it's something that I always listen to, and I'm excited to see the changes into 2022. And can't thank Mark enough for the impact he's had on me and the industry in general.
Happy retirement.
No joke. No joke. Deserves it, man, for sure.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Well, should we bring Josh in here?
Absolutely. Let's get him in.
All right. Oh, we both did it. All right. One of
How
us
you doing, Josh?
What's up, guys?
Not a whole lot. Nice and cold and snowy up here in Buffalo. So I'm sure it's a little warmer down there in Arizona.
Yeah, today I heard Adam talking about his weather in Colorado, and we're in the same, general region of the country. And Andy, I'm sorry, dude, but today I was complaining to my wife because it was 80 degrees, and I would like it to be closer to 70 right now. Yeah. So it's a rough life out here. It's actually been a little bit more warm than normal this time of year, and we've got it. This in the summertime, it's misery in Arizona, and we fight through it all summer. But the fall's so great out here because you've got such a nice winter ahead of you, and it only is going to get better from here on out in Arizona. And we've got great weather already, but I want it to get a little cooler, just so I can actually wear some pants and a sweatshirt once in a while. But it's been an awesome fall.
So you'll laugh about this. You're talking like sweatshirt, pants. Today it was snowing this morning. I took my daughter to daycare. I was wearing shorts and sandals.
Why?
For sure.
Because like we're polar bears up here, right? I'm not cold. So I was like, I didn't feel like finding pants. So I just threw on my pair of gym shorts and a hoodie and walked outside with
You're a tough
Birkenstocks.
guy.
Yeah, it was funny. My wife was like, "Really?" I was like, "Oh yeah."
Like a bear, dude. You're wild.
Yeah.
That's awesome, dude.
Well, I mean, I've been steelhead fishing for what, a month and a half now. I fished all weekend in basically a snowstorm, and I think the low on Saturday when we fished in the morning, it was like 1 degree or 2 degrees with a wind chill, and didn't wear gloves, so it doesn't bother me.
And you could actually use your hands. You had dexterity with your fingers.
Oh yeah.
Wow.
I used to work at a car wash like 10, 12 years ago, and most of the stuff I did, I had to have no gloves on. So I just got used to the cold. Yeah.
Dude, you're crazy. Dude, how was all that? I saw some pics of some big fish. Looks like you guys were doing like a lot of float trips.
It was. So
how
we're
was
on it? It was fun. I lost I'm not gonna lie, it was one of the worst landing of steelhead days I've ever had in my life. I lost 7 and 10 drifts like at 11 o'clock in the morning. I wanted to snap my rod over my leg, but that's the way it goes sometimes. But the ones we did get to shore were big ones. So it was fun.
Heck yeah, man. I was with a buddy, wasn't a guide trip, was just a
No,
buddy trip.
So I actually pay for a guide when I go up there because the river is so large that it's really hard to cover a lot of water by walking. So
Okay.
we go on a drift boat, which is like a 16-foot rowboat that they row you down the river and fish. So, and the guide is a really good friend of mine and my buddies. So every year we go with them on Thanksgiving weekend just because. So
Awesome.
it's good stuff. Yeah.
Sweet. Well, let's I guess break down a little bit of where kind of we are at fishing wise this time of the year. I mean, so we're getting into kind of that early December, really where I kind of feel the main winter fishing occurs, at least around me. And then we kind of are stuck with ice on most of our stuff into that January, February timeframe, and then stuff kind of starts opening back up late into March. But I'm curious to hear what everything looks like in your guys' parts of the world. But I guess, Josh, what do things start to look like? Is this when fish are starting to get deep? I mean, what is your kind of, what are you doing now if you've been on the water here recently? And then what does it kind of look like as it goes into December?
Yeah. So where I live in Arizona, it's probably the last place that it cools off, really, other than like Florida, right? I was fishing in Texas a couple weeks ago, and it was, it was a little warmer than I expected it to be there. And here in Arizona, it's still warmer than you would expect, but you hinted to it a little bit earlier that the fish are, even though things are slow to get cold this winter, the fish are still wanting to do the kind of the wintertime stuff. And yeah, we're seeing a ton of fish getting out deep and stacking up. What's interesting is there still is that freak, kind of late topwater bite. I talked to a guy that yesterday at the lake at the boat ramp that had caught a 4-pounder on a topwater, and I had been spooning all day and 40 plus feet and caught a ton of fish. But, this is a time of year where the fish, there's a time where there are fish in all depths, and there are still fish in all depths here in Arizona and the Southwest, but there are starting to be less fish up shallow and more fish out deep. The percentage of fish that are out deep is a lot higher than it was a couple weeks ago. That's for sure. Even though the weather hasn't really, we haven't had those, 30 degree nights yet, and days that are in the 50s and 60s. The fish are just like, it's amazing. They just eventually need to do their thing. They might be a little late or a little early, but they eventually get there no matter what.
Yeah, I got you. Well, one thing, and I was just down kind of near your neck of the woods, I guess, but I fished the ABA team championship on Havasu and then Mojave.
Cool.
And
nice.
yeah. And on that time frame, I mean, it's exactly what you're talking about. I mean, it was, so I guess it would have been the middle of October, I believe is when that was, but it was, fish were everywhere. It was tough. I mean, there was big fish caught, but it was like, dude, we'd catch them to 6 inches of water. And then you'd also see fish out in 40, and you'd be like, what do we do here? It was junk fishing 101.
Yep. Yeah. It makes it so tough, and, I love fishing for schools of fish. So it's a time of year that like it can't the winter can't get here fast enough because I want to catch them every cast. I don't mind going 5 hours without a bite if there's a chance I could catch them every cast eventually. I can't stand fishing for one every hour. It drives me absolutely nuts, So like what you're talking about, that I know that Havasu tournament was so tough, and Havasu in just general is it's a tough lake in the summer and fall, and really it's an amazing lake in the spring and early summer, and then it's a grind for the rest of the year. Yeah,
so you get 3 months good, 9 months bad, basically.
Yeah, and when it's good, it's good, dude. But and the good thing is it's got big fish in it. So like, if you go out there and catch 4 fish, the odds are you'll catch a couple 4-pounders. But yeah, I feel for anyone trying to catch them at Havasu in September, October.
It was tough, man. It was tough for sure. But yeah, I'd imagine now they're probably starting to be more of a pattern you see kind of where fish are grouping up. I mean, to me, I agree. As we kind of get to this time frame, I mean, it's been so hot here in Colorado, but on our local lake, Horsetooth Reservoir in northern Colorado, those fish are set up great right now. I mean, they're in wads and they're deep. Even though the weather doesn't necessarily translate to that, I feel like more times than not, as anglers, we really try and relate things. And I'm a big hunter. We try and relate things to the weather when stuff's going to happen regardless. Deer are going to get into that breeding cycle because of the light changing, right? And it's the same with the spawn, right? I mean, there could be all these different factors that come in, but regardless, I'm starting to learn, I think, or what my theory is that it's going to be it's more to me related to light in the day of how those fish decide to kind of set up and where bait's going and that kind of a thing.
Yeah, and maybe even temperature at night as well. Like you still have 60-degree days, but how cold is it at night?
Oh, it's getting cold. Yeah, that's a good point.
So the cold nights could draw them out, and then they're like, well, the day's short, so why would I go back up shallow? So they just stay.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's and kind of Josh, what you're saying as far as like a random fish being up shallow eating topwater, I've seen that too, where it's just weird. Like the majority of your fish are off, and then there'll be one guy, we fish a club tournament or something, and he caught them all at 3:00 in the afternoon on the bank, and it's like, were those fish
all
going
by
up?
himself?
Right? Yeah, all by himself. And was that like a early pre-spawner where they talk about the smallmouth having eggs early in the year previously, going up and getting some sun? Like it's just confusing to me, but that happens.
It's a great point. There is always that one guy, and like I said, I talked to that guy at the boat ramp the other day, right? And dude, I mean, they had caught 4 all day, and we had caught 50 plus, so there were more fish out deep, but they're up shallow, and yeah, when you get a weird weather deal, like if it stays warm late, I keep I don't take the topwaters out of the boat, for a couple extra weeks, you know what I mean? Because you might get that urge to go up there and catch them shallow, and it is cool because you might be the last guy doing it or whatever. But yeah, there always is that one guy that does something a little different, huh?
Oh, for sure, man. There's always that one guy. Sometimes he's either home running or he is not doing anything.
No doubt.
It's kind of funny though, the thing you say about smallmouth. A couple years ago in a club tournament I fished, we unfortunately had a couple of fish die, and the guy took them home and he cut them open. He goes, I never knew this, but they had eggs, fully developed eggs already in their belly in October.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Wow.
On Lake Erie. Yeah.
On Erie.
On Erie. So, because our fish, as soon as the water gets to 52, they start pulling up on beds. So,
hey, let me ask you this, and this is off the wall. I don't want to ask you guys too many questions today. I know you
can ask away. That's fine.
But we joke about it on our podcast because you'll get a guy every once in a while that will act like he swears there's a mini fall spawn that no one ever knows about, and I've never seen it myself. But do you think there's any possibility that was happening, and do you think there's any possibility that does happen, or no?
The latest I have seen a fish on a bed is the second week of August on Erie.
So that's not a fall spawn. That's a summer. That's a spring and / summer spawn. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't think I have seen fish get up shallow and do weird things. I don't think they're spawning. I just think they're being funky, like trying to get crayfish or something. But I do know I have a buddy in Florida that swears there is a fall spawn, like November, December. He'll catch a couple on beds.
I can see it in Florida.
Yeah.
Those fish are waiting for it to cool down for sure.
Yeah.
So like that's almost even in the same. I guess it's technically fall to us, but I can see how the fish could blend November, December into January, February, because it's a full blown spawn by February 1st down there. But yeah, I was just curious. I get that guy. It's literally a running joke on our podcast because like none of us have ever seen it. I personally don't think it's like a thing, but once in a while, a guy will come up to you and absolutely swear that the fish spawn in the fall. And I don't know. It's a weird one.
I mean, could it happen? I suppose, but you need two mates that are ready to go, right? And if there's only one female that's ready to go, I highly doubt 100 males are going to be jumping on it. So, I mean, they could. You never know because guys be guys. But, I know on like Lake Simcoe, a little north of here, I've heard of them spawning in September, but it's like a continuation. Like every month of the year they spawn there. But that's another 200, 300 miles north, and it gets cold. It stays colder later, and it gets colder sooner. So maybe they just constantly spawn all the time. Like who knows?
I want someone to take me out on the lake in September, October, and show me a bed.
Yeah,
and then I'll believe them.
Yeah, I mean, I've never seen one personally any time that time of year.
Just wild.
You know? But what is kind of crazy about bedfish to me that there's always a couple, it seems, way out of like if your lake, your home lake that you always go to, if it's like, all right, they spawn the second week of April or whatever it is, it always surprises me seeing a bed or something like a month before that or 3 weeks before that, or, you know, obviously 3, 4, 5 weeks after that is always crazy to me. But I know, especially on bodies of water where there's just a huge fish population, like maybe like a Rayburn or something, they talk about the spawn just being super long because there's so many that have to come up, you know, and then you have that peak window. But it always kind of catches me by surprise for sure. Seeing some of those, you're like, dude, I've never seen one this time of the year. And you're like, no, that's a bed.
So I have a little theory on that, and I seen it happen this spring. I fished a tournament the first weekend of May this year, but the days leading up to it, it was in like the mid 70s, so the water got warm, and then it snowed during the tournament, and we had fish on beds like 2.5 weeks early, and ice just got off the lake 3 weeks earlier than like prior to that. So it can happen, but I think it's very temperature dependent. If the conditions are right in one bay or on one creek, like one flat,
oh sure,
they're gonna pull up and spawn no matter what. If it's close to that time of year, and if there's a full moon, absolutely. So,
hey, I'm sorry to drag your winter fishing podcast into talking about bed,
right?
Dude, it's fine. Like,
name of the game here.
Some places like Florida, there's a spawn in the winter, so I mean, it could be a winter pattern, right?
There you go, dude. Okay, there we go.
Tie-ins, but
go ahead, Andy.
No, you're fine. Go, Adam.
I was just gonna say, you know, we'll kind of maybe get into a little bit. I know that Josh too, and I listen to your podcast as well, man. Anglers Happy Hour, and I have a blast listening to it. And I listen to your topic on kind of some of these offshore fish that you're probably chasing right now. And I know that you like doing that. Maybe let's get into a little bit about techniques. I mean, when you're out there and you're seeing them on live scope or whatever you're doing, what's the first thing you're reaching for?
This time of year, like November, December, I'm all about the spoon, you know, and as you get into like the really crazy frigid cold of like January, early February, things change. But November, December, here and a lot of places I fish, the spoon is so tough to beat. You can catch them, and it's dependent on lake to lake. Like, you know, I do a lot of deep cranking this time of year. I throw an Alabama rig a lot this time of year when, you know, and that's shallower, you know, 10 to 20 feet. Spinner bait, that type of stuff, slow rolling a big spinner bait. But what is like my drug is just catching 20 fish in 20 minutes. I love doing that, you know, and that's how you do it this time of year is the spoon. So, you know, I've done a handful of guide trips over the last couple of weeks since the season ended. And I try to just preface it with like, hey, it might take us a while to find them today, or we may, it might seem weird when we're sitting there jigging up and down, not catching anything. It's a weird way to bass fish, but trust me, if we can get on a couple schools, you will be happy that we're fishing this way,
Yeah.
It's because it's so much fun when you get them fired up like that. It seems weird that it would be fun to be dropping, not even casting your bait. You just drop it on the side of the boat, let it go down, and just jig it up and down. And that doesn't sound like it's not exciting, like a topwater bite or, a close combat battle with a fish flipping. But
Sure.
when the fish get fired up and you catch them on every drop for 30 minutes or an hour, it's amazing. So I'm always looking for that spoon bite this time of year.
Now, will they eat a blade too?
A blade bait?
Yeah.
Yeah, they absolutely will. But the thing is, out here anyways, I like to get straight vertical over them. And I think they're just like somewhat more efficient ways to catch them than a blade bait. That blade bait, if you're fishing a vertical, it works and you'll catch fish. It'll foul up a little bit more than a standard spoon or, some of the other baits that I use. So it's definitely a way to catch fish. I love throwing a blade bait, but that's more of a search thing for me. But when they get fired up, I go with more standard baits for like actual jigging.
Fun. It's all fun.
Yeah, it totally is. Yep.
No, exactly. That's we do a lot of blade baiting here for sure. And I agree. I always kind of like doing it at an angle. If I'm dropping something vertically, it'll be something different. But even if it's a light cast, 30, 40 yards or less, even just making a pitch with it and then bringing it back to the boat seems to be most effective for at least it not fouling up from the standpoint of blade bait.
That's one of the best baits. It's probably the best bait to get a fish that absolutely does not want to bite. Like if you take the fish in the most negative mood of all time, a blade bait's probably the best way to catch it.
That's juice. That is juice.
You guys agree?
Oh, yeah.
There's no better bait to like take a fish that's just miserable and cold and make it bite.
It's funny on my pre-spawn guide trips up here on Erie, I'll have my clients like dragging swim baits and Neds. And if they won't eat, I'll drop a blade bait and sit there and rip it like hyper aggressively. And all of a sudden they'll fire up. And I'm like, oh, there we go.
Nice. That's cool.
We got a blade bait guy here, Stephen Carey of Binsky's Fish Sense Lures.
Oh, he knows.
The Binsky blade.
Those are the only blades I throw for Erie smallmouth. It's just too much fun.
Man, have you guys messed much with I tried some of this summer, like a heavy blade bait, like a really heavy one somewhere in the summer when fish are just dead too offshore?
I haven't tried it.
I bought some when we were at Chickamauga for the BPT, but I never got around to throwing them. But I could see how they'd be cool. Have you had any luck with yours?
Yeah, and not so much. We don't have the big shad populations here. I haven't tried it on a place that's actually got, really big shad in there or something like that where they really get off on a ledge lake. But what I have done is I've dropped it, at a fish that I see on live scope or something, because it falls so dang fast. And I've had, just so many fish follow that thing. And then I got on a deal in some deep water with that big one. I don't know. I guess it wasn't big, but it was an ounce or whatever it is, and big flashy thing. And this summer I did. And then I also jacked a bunch of walleye on it. Walleye really seemed to like that thing. So if you guys are looking for a walleye bait, this blade bait for money.
Something about that vibration and the flash and everything combined. It's an old school bait, but it works.
For sure. One of the more fun ways to catch them too.
Yeah. And one other thing, so when you're saying vertically dropping these spoons, I'm assuming, is this a smaller spoon? This isn't something where you're pitching it, and this is dropping directly below the boat. What kind of a spoon are we talking?
Yeah, so I'm using a spinning rod a lot of times, and it's not because it's like super light and finessey, but I just love how you can just open the bail on a spinning rod and not have to peel line out for 40 feet, because you're lifting and dropping your bait so many times through the course of the day. So like, if I'm not around a bunch of trees or anything like that, I use a spinning rod, fairly light line, and I'm using typically like a half-ounce bait, like a half-ounce jigging spoon, a half-ounce snap jig from Berkeley. It's kind of like a winged jig with it's like a jig head with wings on it.
That's right.
And if you've seen a lot of like the ice fishing jigs that are on the market, it's a soft plastic version of that, because you'll take that jig head, you'll put a little like a gulp minnow on it, and you jig it. It's the same thing. And I do use a lot of the ice fishing jigs as well. So just kind of, those are the three: the standard spoon, like a hammer jigging spoon, the snap jig, and one of the ice fishing jigs. And it's typically like it's a spinning rod deal. It's a smaller bait. I love throwing a flutter spoon, but it's also it's a deal to find the fish this time of year. For me anyways, like in the summertime, that's a bait that you'll actually use to really catch them over and over again. But for me, if I'm throwing a blade bait or a flutter spoon, an underspin, anything like that this time of year, it's to find them. And once you're on them, there's no better way just to put them in the boat as fast as you can than straight up and down.
Yeah. Oh, it's
me up.
Yeah, you're getting me excited. Well, I mean, and that I agree, as far as the spinning rod goes, it's made a lot of sense to me. When I drop straight down, I find myself not having to reach and pull line out. And I agree. I've whipped out the sissy stick a bunch before for vertical fishing. Just, it makes it so much easier. Even if I'm throwing something bigger, it just is so much easier to be able to just drop things fast.
Totally. That makes total sense. And hey, when you're fishing like that too, whether it's a drop shot or a spoon like we're talking about here, you're using a swivel a lot of times with the spoon, but line twist can be a real factor. And if you're using a spinning rod, you're probably using braid, and that's a lot easier to manage some line twist. If you got 15 or 17 pound on a baitcaster and it gets even a little bit twisted, you've got problems instantly. With a spinning rod and 8-pound braid, like that line can twist and it's still fine. Like you'll never even have an issue. So it's another reason to do it.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Well, this kind of answers Smith's Fishing for Life questions. We had a bunch of juice there from Josh. As far as what baits to use, let's see. We got one other one that I was going to put up here a little closer to you. So as far as on Lake Pleasant in December, are you still going to be doing those similar type things or anything different?
Yeah, so Gary, Lake Pleasant is it's everything I've kind of talked about. Definitely works. The jigging spoon's really good. Lake Pleasant is one of those lakes that's got a lot of trees, so sometimes I will go to a little heavier line when I'm like spooning in those trees. But a rig, if you're fishing a little shallower, an A rig or a small swim bait really works well this time of year. The fish do stay shallow in that lake. A fair amount stay shallow in the dirtier water parts of the lake. And then when you get deep, and you get down in the lower end of the lake, it's a spoon or a drop shot for sure.
Gotcha.
So my question, when in regard to the spoon, do they always eat it on the fall, or sometimes when you're like burning it back up to drop on them again? Have you ever gotten them to chase it to the surface and eat it close to the boat?
Totally. Yeah. They eat it on the fall 90% of the time, but I'll tell you, it drives you nuts sometimes because you're sitting there jigging it. And if they're in a negative mood, they may not be biting it right away. And then you go to reel in and kind of give up, and then they follow it up. And now that you could see that on sonar before, but live scope is such a difference maker, and you can see it all happening live.
Yeah.
So you'd be like, now you guys want it as I'm reeling it in, right? But a lot of times what I'll do is like if I drop down on a school of fish and they don't bite it in the first minute, it's not super common, but it does happen. Maybe they're pressured or something like that. The key is getting one to bite. And once you can get one to bite, it's game on. They get fired up and it can be every drop for a while, but you got to get that first one. And if they're in a negative mood, I'll do that a lot of times. I'll reel it. Like if you're in 40 feet, I'll reel it up 10 or 20 feet real fast and try to get a couple to chase, and then drop it down, jig it erratically a couple times, drop and just get crazy with it for a couple, maybe 30 seconds or a minute, and see if that can trigger one. But is that something you see your way too, where, sometimes reeling it up, they think it's getting away and they get it?
I get them to fire like that sometimes with a heavy drop shot.
Same here.
So like if I'm on a boat, I don't have live scope or anything on my boat like that, but I can see it sometimes on 2D, but it's a little laggy if I'm slow reeling it. But if I'm using Panoptics or live scope and I'll drop a heavy one, I'll go to like a 3/4 ounce and just burn it in to see if I can get them to react. And if they start to come up, I'll kill it. And I'm like, all right, now we got this figured out. And I can always get like 5 to 8 extra bites doing
That's
that.
a big difference, man.
Yeah.
Yep.
Some juice.
But
You gotta see it.
But the heavy, like it has to be the heaviest drop shot weight in your box. I've used 1 ouncers and gotten them to fire. Yeah. So
That's cool.
but they won't chase up a quarter because it falls too slow.
Yeah.
It's a nice little trick.
Yeah. Well, that what you guys are saying as far as reeling that thing in quickly, I experienced on actually at Havasu, during that tournament, day one we had 4 fish, and we were trying to make it to the second day where the weight zeroed at Lake Mojave, right? Well, we ended up making it, but that we blew the power head on my buddy's boat running back in. Right. So we're like, oh, great crap. Like, and we had not fished really close to the launch, where I know a lot of tournaments, a lot of things go down on Havasu right there, but we had not messed with the cages or fished any of that stuff. Well, we were stuck to, I was lucky enough to have a good college buddy, shout out to Gunnar Strenton, to borrow his boat on Mojave. But on Havasu, we're like, we got another day to fish. We got to catch something here. So ended up catching a 3-pound smallmouth. I was on live scope, watching all the cages, which are just crazy to me. I've never seen anything like that. And there's fish all around them, but they're so pressured. And I was throwing an 1/8 ounce tiny little Kitech over these cages. And when I had one actually eat, it was that exact situation. Nothing was happening. And I was reeling it in to make another cast at a different fish. And I reeled it up fast, and I watched one come out of the cage and smoke it at the boat. I mean, he came out of 20 feet of water to eat that swim bait. And man, it's just crazy how that sometimes just that you got to make him react. There's got to be something that, and especially when there's groups of fish like we're talking about in the wintertime.
That can actually frustrate you, right? Because you're like, dude, I was trying to catch you, and you're gonna bite it like when I'm not trying to catch you.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, if you can learn, and sometimes it's a fluke deal, but sometimes you can learn from it. You know, you see it flipping a lot. You know, where sometimes you won't get bit on your actual presentation, and you get bit as you're reeling the bait out of the water. And if it happens 2 or 3 times, it's like, well, maybe I should be swimming a jig instead of flipping today, you know, and you can make little adjustments. But and sometimes it's a freak deal. Sometimes it's a psychotic fish. Like, hey, dude, smallmouths are psychotic, right? So it's a crazy smallmouth. But you know, a lot of times you can definitely pick something up from that for sure.
For sure. And having that open mind for that. No. Man, so as far as I guess I'm just curious, and I know with some of the cup events and that kind of a thing, you're able to fish more this kind of fall period, or even I'm curious to see what have you taken from everything you've learned growing up in the Southwest to apply in winter specific fishing as you go across the country. Maybe talk a little bit about maybe what you've seen in the Midwest and also kind of that Southeast, maybe area as well.
So, I mean, yeah, I wish I had the opportunity to fish more winter, other parts of the country, but I still do get to do it. You know, sometimes we'll have late fall tournaments, maybe really early spring tournaments that kind of fish like winter tournaments, and then just random stuff. I go to maybe pre-practice a lake back east, and it's December or January. And, you know, the lakes in some parts of the country are very different. Some lakes, there's more similarities than I would expect. You know, there are some things that just work everywhere. Like, I mean, winter fishing anywhere in the country, I think a jig is probably your best bait a lot of times. Like, if you're not sure what to do and you're talking like late December, January, February fishing, a jig will catch a bass on any body of water that's not frozen. You know, that's probably the best bait. Yeah, a crankbait's right there. You know, your bait selection is really minimized. So, you know, that's kind of cool. One of the cool things about winter fishing. You know, I'm talking about the spoon fishing, and that's a huge player out here. It works anywhere that you've got clear water, you know, and somewhat deep water. So very big deal around the Ozarks, you know, and then you get even to the Southeast where you've got those clear herring fisheries and stuff. A spoon's an awesome way to catch them. It works in Texas, you know, but you need that clear water. If you have dirty water, the spoon's not your friend. It's just you need a couple feet of clarity for this fish to get deep and to see your spoon. If you got dirty water in the wintertime, it's more of a crankbait and jig type deal.
Now, is there a specific water temp you look for when using those specific baits?
For me, not really. The spoon is, as long as the fish have an eye on shad, maybe schooled up. And, we were talking earlier about how this winter things are not cooling off quite as quick in a lot of parts of the country. But for me, they've still been biting it really well. For me, a lot of times I'm not really a water temp guy, and I get that question a lot. Like, what water temp do you start throwing this or stop throwing this? And there are a few things, but I'm actually, and it's one thing that I'm learning and working on is not trying to worry too much about water temp because, there's so many other factors that just kind of trusting your gut and fishing the conditions of a specific day, you know, you might have an amazing day throwing a buzz bait in December if you don't worry too much about water temp, or February if you don't worry too much about water temp. And it's the same thing with a spoon. Like a spoon will work in the summertime too. So I don't think I can put like a number on that.
It sounds like more of always keep everything honest because you don't know what's gonna be bit that day.
I agree 100%.
For the most part.
Yeah.
If you're taking a swing at a lake, you've never been there, and it's your first time, and you're like, I don't know, just throw it all on the deck and have a ball till you figure it out. I like that kind of fishing. It's fun.
That's one of the crazy things. Like, there are always a lot of different options, and I'm not saying that, there definitely are a lot of times where one thing is going to work a lot better than another, and it makes more sense, if the water's cold, to throw a cold water bait. But I definitely don't have like a rule where it's like these are coming out of the boat when the water temp hits 60 degrees, or these are going in the boat when it hits 60, or as soon as we get a 30-degree night, no more time. None of that stuff. It's definitely just kind of feeling it out, right?
Yeah.
I'm on the same board, and it kind of refers back to the time of year light kind of thing for me. But I think the biggest thing that I'm picking up on from you, Josh, is letting the fish tell you what's going on, rather than having any preconceived notions. I mean, how many times are there just situations where you're like, I did not expect that to work out, and they are smoking a top water, and you're like, wow, this is awesome.
Sure, yeah. Sometimes you got to have your stuff that you're confident in, and you've got to have, your, I don't want to say rules, but things that you kind of
Guidelines
live by when you're fishing, right? But you just can't. I've learned that you can never say never on anything.
Keeps us coming back for sure.
Yeah, no doubt.
Cool. I mean, they're simple-minded, right? Their brains are like the size of a pea, so they see everything as food. They have to eat. That's the simplest way to look at it.
I like that.
Yeah, they have to eat.
Joe's got a bunch of questions here, but before that, one other question that I thought of when you were explaining your spoonfish. So I'm curious, when you're saying you're spending that, it may take you all day to find that bite, but when it happens, it goes off. How often are you strictly behind the console graphing to find these fish? And how many times are you picking up a spoon and casting to them, or like you're talking about using a search bait to make those longer casts? Maybe those fish are real tight to the bottom. What does your day look like when it's like, hey, we got to go find something? It may take us 5 hours. I mean, what does that look like broken down?
Yeah. So, the better electronics get, the less fishing you have to do, in general, right? And there are plenty of times where you've got to fish to find them, because of a depth that you're fishing. Maybe you're fishing pretty shallow, maybe whatever it may be. But now is one of those times a year where, at least on the lakes that I'm fishing, like, if you don't see fish, there's no fish there. So, like, why even bother, right? It's it's tough, when you're out with a buddy, or if you're out in a tournament situation, you understand what's going on, and you can sit there and idle for an hour without making a cast and feel good about it. It's tough if you're out on a guide trip because you've got these clients that are like, dude, are we ever going to fish? So you got to be kind of like explaining the scenario to them, and like, hey, look, if we catch them, if we can find that mother lode, we might catch 50 in an hour if we keep going, So that's all stuff that you have to keep in mind. But really, the better electronics get, the clear view, which is like basically down, And the side view on the Garmin's I'm running is so good that, dude, I mean, I'm not going to fish until I see 100% for sure, bass on the screen. And I'm not going to, this time of year, depending on what lake you're at, some of these lakes have schools of hundreds of fish. So if I see like 2 dots, I mean, if there's 2 dots in a tree, like that's cool. Maybe you could catch a couple, maybe you catch 1 or 2, but like it doesn't interest me. It's like going down the bank when you're sight fishing in the spring. Like you're not going to fish for a 1 pounder when you're fun fishing, right? You're going to wait till you see a big one. Well, this is no different. You're idling looking for spots, and you're not going to idle and stop and try to catch one. You're going to idle till you see a bunch and hopefully have the opportunity to catch a ton of fish. So I don't know if there's like an exact percentage of time, but a couple of these days that I fished recently, if you fish 8 hours, you definitely spend at least a couple of them looking. And then when you for sure see fish, you stop. And for me anyways, if I get up on the front and it doesn't look good, I'm not catching them right away, I pretty much keep moving. A lot of times it's like a 1 or 2 minute stop because it's a needle in a haystack. But man, when you can find it, it's I mean, the fish get more grouped up now this time of year than any time of year. So it's either going to be really good or dead water.
Sure. It makes a lot of sense. And do you feel that there's a time frame? I mean, if you're looking for them and you find them in the morning, or you're looking for them and you find them late in the evening, I mean, do you feel like there's a window, or is it you just got to find the right fish and it's going on?
That's a good question, Adam. And time is a huge factor. And I think the reason for that, well, I'm sure there are multiple reasons, but the biggest one is they don't eat all day long this time of year. The metabolism moves so slow, and certain lakes, the fish, if you don't hit them at the right time, it can be really tough. And sometimes you never really know what that time's going to be.
Sure.
For me, there's always a window right at first light, even in the wintertime. It's kind of crazy, but even in the wintertime, there's always some fish biting right at first light. And then sometimes if you've got a really good spot, really, really, really good spot, probably doesn't matter. But I've definitely been in a lot of scenarios this time of year where you know where a bunch of fish are at. You caught them a couple days ago. You go back, say you caught them at 11 o'clock or 12 when the sun was really high, and you go back at 8 o'clock and the graph just looks a little bit different. Maybe there's a little bit more bait in the area. Maybe the fish are moving around a little bit more. You don't catch anything, but you come back at noon at the same time you caught them the day before, and it's gangbusters. And then they quit biting, and they don't bite the rest of the day, and like, I definitely think it's a consistent thing this time of year as far as like on a specific spot, on a specific body of water. But it's so hard to pinpoint because I even see like the lake I'm fishing a lot right now, Roosevelt in Arizona, different spots are really good at different times of day. And it's really hard for me to explain why, but and that's the difference of sometimes of catching nothing or having a banner day is your timing. But I would say it's the fall and winter in general. If you've got a place that you have a lot of confidence in, that it has fish around it, hit it several times through the day because, they're not going to eat all day, and it just has to work out once.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. It makes it frustrating, especially from a tournament perspective too.
Yes.
And this is a little bit of a selfish question, but I'm headed down to Lake Eufaula here. I guess I leave Friday for the Bassmaster Team National Championship.
Nice.
And I mean, I'm like, gosh, this time of year, I do feel like timing is so important. And it's on a place you've never been, and you have 2.5 days to break it down. It's like you might be in the right spot just at the wrong time and never find a group of fish, right, that would have taken you all the way or something. So it makes it tough for sure.
Sounds like title fishing, right? Like you fish over the winning fish at the wrong time and you never even know it. But it's really like I'm talking about a lake that I fish all the time and I know really well. But man, when you're on a body of water that you don't know real well, you just know you're going to get less information from those fish. So it just makes it tougher in general, and you got to be extra sharp.
For sure. For sure.
Absolutely. Especially this time of year, as you're just pointing out, like fall and winter are so important to know precisely where the fish are. If you go to a lake blind, sometimes it's hard to figure out because they're not always where they're supposed to be. They don't like to read the book.
No doubt. Yeah. And hey, this time of year, like I think most tournaments this time of year, as far as that a day is concerned, tournament days, these tournaments are won in flurries more than other times a year. Like I look back at any tournament I've done really well with this in this time of year, and like I can look back at like a 30-minute window where I pretty much caught all the weight, and then the rest of the day might have been an extreme struggle. So you really need to know when to be in the exact place and line it up perfectly, and it's easy. But like if you miss that window, it's very difficult, and that's what makes it such a challenge this time of year. Fun fishing, it's not a big deal. You got all day, you can mess around, but otherwise you have that extra pressure from the clock ticking, and everything's just amplified, and it makes it really tough, man. Like it's so important this time of year to have a good place to start on. You know, it's so important.
Absolutely.
That makes a lot of sense. You're not fishing for a bite here, a bite there, a bite. You're not necessarily fishing where you're getting your 5 throughout the day. I mean, it sounds like a lot of your success this time of the year has been, man, it is a grind in 30 minutes. I don't know how, but we got 20 pounds and we're coming in.
Bang, bang. We ran into him, dude. It was awesome, man. But I've
5 minutes ago, need 3, got 4. Perfect.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah.
So we got T Chang here. He's got a good question. He wants to know what palette color you're running for your live scope. And could that vary? I'm going to add a second part. Could it vary from water, like body of water to body of water, like clear water, muddy, stained? Do you change up your palette color?
Great question. And, you know, really, I don't do like a crazy amount of adjustment with my live scope. I run it on the basically the generic amber that you see 90% of the time, and it works really well for me. I mix up my side palettes on side view sometimes, you know, and I don't even same thing. I don't have rules. I just like I'll look at it and say, well, you know, man, maybe this I could see a little bit better by mixing it up, and I might try orange crawfish, or I might try a blue or a green. But with live scope, I pretty much keep it pretty simple and leave it on amber.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I keep it pretty simple with that, and it's what I like most of the time too. And I'm just messing with settings as far as if there's a clarity difference. But one other question here, Joe's got a couple here, but let's start with
Joe.
This one. And I'm curious.
No wait, because he's hammering you guys.
Wondering if Josh ever throws an A-rig in Arizona for those deep fish. And I'll follow up just like Andy did. When is your best time frame for throwing that A-rig?
Yeah, so the A-rig, it's still, if you're looking for a big fish this time of year, it's probably the number one way to do it. It's not the, you know, for me, I'm not going to do it if I'm messing around fun fishing, because it's literally fishing an A-rig that deep. Mm-hmm. It's a pain. You know, it's a pain to get it down there that deep. You're going to lose a lot of baits in the trees. It's just a pain. But if you're trying to win tournaments and catch big fish, you know, and it's really tough to beat. It wins a ton of tournaments, and I throw it a lot in tournaments. A lot of guys, and I'll do it too, will even long line an Alabama rig this time of year, you know, because if you're fishing it that deep, if you just think about it physics wise, you launch the farthest cast you can and you have to get it down there 40 feet. All it's going to want to do is just start coming up the minute you start reeling, right? Unless you're using crazy heavy weight. So to be really efficient, the best way to do it is if it's legal in your tournament is to long line it like you're long lining a deep diving crankbait. And I'll do that a lot. But dude, it's just, I mean, if it's, you know, the fish have to be positioned right, and you got to be willing to just be patient with it. You know, it's not the funnest way to catch them, but it's very effective.
Dang. Dang. Yeah. I mean, and I feel like too, just the technology with live scope and everything else has taught me so much as far as how fast I really think I'm bringing an A rig in, because it's so easy to pick up, on live scope.
It's
But like,
amazing on live scope. You're right.
you're sitting there. I'm like, wow, I'm over 40 feet of water. And I could have told you the last 5 years that I was reeling this thing on the bottom, or like within the bottom 5 feet. And I am halfway through the column and these fish are coming out needing it from
It's a
way
great point, Adam.
farther than I
Yep.
thought.
Yep.
It's
That's
crazy.
awesome.
Man, well, and this is kind of off subject, but also great just for your career and everything else to hear. Joe wanted to ask if there's time, which I'm just going to throw it in here now, but whether or not your win on the St. Lawrence changed how you fished events after that win.
Yeah, that's a good question, man. For me, that tournament was just a big monkey off my back, really. I had been fishing for like 6 years on tour and hadn't had one, right? And I was watching all my buddies get their first wins, and just that monkey was getting heavier and heavier and heavier. So it was a very relieving feeling at the time. And it hasn't really changed a ton because, like, a win does a ton for, any professional fisherman. That first like national win is huge. It gives you more legitimacy. There's nothing that gives you more exposure and helps your career more than winning a tournament. Like it's a huge deal. I can't overstate that. But at the same time, it's not enough to where you can, to me anyways, totally change your style of fishing. Maybe fish a bunch more aggressively or whatever, because it's at the end of the year, it still is like, hey, I still have to make sure that I get enough points to qualify for the Red Crest or the Classic or whatever it is. And like points are still important. For me, it hasn't changed it a ton. But it'd be interesting to ask some other guys and see, but for me anyways, I don't know. I think I've probably kind of kept at least a similar mindset before and after.
It's fair.
For sure. Makes a lot of sense. No, I glad that I mean, it feels like it is such an important thing on guys getting their careers going, and to survive without a win, it seems very, very difficult. Especially, it seems like you see some of these careers that have blossomed have been because of an early win in a guy's career.
For sure. 100%. It's a big deal, man. It really is. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Andy, do you have anything else on winter fishing or in Josh's area?
Yeah. So my one big thing would be, because you guys have all three there, right? Largemouth, spots, and smallmouth, or am I mistaken?
Actually, no spots. I've
No
done a lot
spots?
of winter fishing for spots in other places, but we don't have any here.
You probably have to go across the border to California.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And a lot in the Southeast too, the Southeast, those clear bodies of water, but, and the herring lakes and stuff. But, they would do great out here. They've just never been introduced. So it's actually hard to believe, man.
Yeah.
It is.
That's crazy, because a lot of people stock those things like in lakes in the Southeast illegally because they want them. Wow. They want another fish. Oh yeah. I was reading some articles about it that they just start like showing up, especially like the Alabama spotted bass. They're like showing up in like West Virginia lakes and stuff because people are moving them and transplanting them. Yeah.
The bucket biologist.
Yeah.
That's right.
So it's like, but like, I'm surprised nobody's like transported them out west yet just for that reason. It's kind of crazy because I feel like they would do really well. But if you had to choose one of the largemouth, smallmouth, or spot, which one would you choose to target in winter if you could?
It's pretty interesting. They act really different, they act very different, right? And the spots are awesome because they don't mind the cold water. They bite pretty dang good in the cold water. They're almost always there for you if you know where they're at. They're always willing to bite. So they're great. I mean, I love them. The smallmouth in a lot of lakes don't go as deep as the largemouth in lakes that have them both, which might surprise a lot of people.
Backwards.
Yep.
That surprises me a lot. Yeah.
We've got, a handful of lakes out here that get really deep, and the largemouth, the spoon fishing that I'm talking about, you almost never catch a smallmouth. But if you pick up a jerk bait or a crankbait and you go shallow, you'll start catching smallmouth. And I think a part of that might be, I was talking about it the other day with a buddy, might be because they're more sight feeding, and largemouth will feed with their lateral line a little bit more. And I just don't know if, I mean, I know you guys catch them deep on the Great Lakes, and I've caught smallmouth in 40, 50 feet, on the St. Lawrence River and in that really clear water. But if they've got the choice, they just seem to stay shallower in our lakes this time of year, which is, I mean, I'm not talking 5 feet. They might be at 5 feet.
Do your lakes pull a lot of current?
Almost no current.
Almost no current. Okay.
Yep.
Because I would say that could be a common factor as well. So on the river systems in the Great Lakes, I'm going to give up a little bit more juice here. I find we catch them shallower even as the water gets into the low 40s than we do in the lakes. But in the summertime, it's completely backwards. In the summertime, I can catch them shallow in the lakes. And in the river, I have to go deep. So just a little funny tidbit there.
That's really interesting.
Yeah. So like if I were to go out on the river, which is 8 minutes from my house right now, I could probably catch them in 10 foot or less. I'm moving baits, even though the water temp is 44, 45 degrees in the river.
So they don't need to jet down deep over there right away. They don't need to rush it.
I've caught them with 38-degree temps in 6 foot of water on moving baits.
Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Very. But then I go out in Lake Erie and I'm like, I can't catch them in under 35 foot. So it's completely different. There's 8 miles separating the fish.
It's funny. Yeah, so the current's the factor there. And it all depends on where you fish, right? But it's a good question. What's your favorite to catch? But I just find myself catching more largemouth this time of year, even though which is ironic because the smallmouth and spots are maybe more of a cold water bass a little bit.
Right.
And if I was fishing on Table Rock, that's a great example. They just had that monster tournament, the Bass Pro Shops tournament last week. And I think smallmouth and spots probably played a massive factor. I know they did in the guys' bags that won. So it might be different. But the way I fish here in Arizona, I just end up catching more largemouth. But it all depends on the body of water. You go to Lake Havasu in the wintertime, I catch more smallies the way I fish than largemouth. It totally depends on where you're at. Your techniques change, and a lot of times it's interesting. They don't act the same. The fish will kind of do different things.
Yeah, I would say you probably run into more bigger largemouth up shallow when you're targeting smallmouth as opposed to the opposite. Because you already said you don't catch smallmouth when you're fishing deep for largies.
You just don't catch them where I live in 40 feet. You just don't catch them at all. But yeah, you're right. I mean, you might catch a stray largemouth up there, and it might be big for sure.
Gotcha. And when they're in these big schools, are you noticing a size where they're all, is it all 2-pounders, or are you getting in mixed in a 4-pounder that's in with those 2-pounders, or are all the fish together? What do you see in school wise?
It's pretty random this time of year more than others. A lot of times a year, I really feel like fish school by size, depending on what the type of bait fish they're eating. Like Tennessee River, you might have a spot that's got some big ones on it because there's gizzard shad that come through there a lot. Out here, it's just one of those deals where almost all the fish in the lake start doing the same thing. So the little bass, the big bass, all the other species, a lot of the other species, I should say, like you'll catch, dude, like I go all year long and might catch 2 catfish. And there's not a day where I don't catch more than 2 catfish on a jigging spoon. I mean, we caught a monster flathead the other day. We caught
I was about to say, I saw that.
Yeah. So and it just goes to show that that's the comfortable depth. That's where the bait's at. That's where everything wants to live. And you do see mix, like you'll be spooning up some small ones, and then you'll catch a 4 or 5-pounder. And since you have the smaller fish, you've got the bluegill down there, you got the yellow bass, and you got the giant bass that are there to eat the yellow bass. So they're not there. They're there, but they're not there for the shad. They're there for the yellow bass. So, and it's one of the cool things about spoon fishing. And I know it's not just here in Arizona. I talked to my buddy John Murray that fishes Watts Bar in Chickamauga a lot. And dude, it's just a melee down there. Every single fish that lives in the lake you might catch on a jigging spoon, because a lot of them are down there. Just white bass, hybrid,
just the little hammered spoons.
Any spoon like anything like that. Yeah, man. It's just where everything is living on a clear body body of water that time of year. Everything goes down there.
Yeah, awesome. That is awesome. We got T Chang asking, is Josh planning to run the new Nitro XL next season?
100%. Yeah, I've got it on order, and I can't wait to get it for sure. Yeah, it looks awesome. I mean, it's got it looks similar from far away, but you get into the boat and you notice a lot of differences, some new storage stuff, some new features, and they say it's faster and a better ride. It's already, a good ride, and already runs great. So I can't wait.
The front deck looks massive.
It does, and it's already massive on my boat, dude. So it's insane. I can't wait for sure.
So
it's better.
Funny, going back like 10 years ago when I started bass fishing local club, everybody's running like cookie cutter 18.6 Tritons, and what would be the other one, like the Z, I forgot what the Ranger was, but not the 5 series, like the 119s.
Yeah,
so everybody had like 119s or cookie cutter Tritons 186s, and my buddy Joe had a Z9. They were like, this thing looks like an aircraft carrier on the water compared to everything else, because it's so like outside the water they look very like clean and they have very crisp cuts, but you put it in the water, it looks like a big box, and it's just funny how it looked compared to everything else.
I've never, and that's all I've ever had, right? I've been fishing out of those. I mean, I had a handful of Z9s, handful of the 21s, and they're just, I've never fished out of like a narrow, small boat. So I've been lucky. I mean, I'm all about fishability and stability and storage, and they got a ton of it for sure, dude. You're right. They're just like, they're battleships.
Yeah. It's like watching them run down the lake at 70 of that thing. I'm like, that thing's going to take someone out. It's massive. So like everyone's got like 18-foot Tritons, and he's got this almost, what are they, 21-foot 4, I think, right? Or a 21-foot 2.
Yeah, it might be 21.4. It might be. I think it's 20 at least. Yeah, maybe 21.4. I was gonna say 21.3. So
like they're massive boats compared to just about everything else. Besides, I think like 21 PHXs now. Those things are just huge. But
maybe 21.6.
Yeah. So it's just crazy. Like, it was funny. All these little tiny boats in this big Z9. I'm like, you don't belong here, man. What are you doing?
Hilarious, dude, that you remember that.
Yeah. So he turned out to be one of my really good buddies, and he makes all these, like, all my net heads and stuff for me. But it's just that first time I saw that boat, I was like, wow, like, this is cool.
That's fun.
So I guess that's a good segue into 2022. Are you just going to fish the BPT, or are you going to fish the tackle warehouse circuit as well?
Good question, man. I think I'm just going to fish BPT. It's I'd love to do both. I love both styles of tournaments, and the more tournaments, the better. But, man, I got 7 BPTs, Red Crest heavy hitters, U.S. Open. That's 10 tournaments already. Depending on cups, the last couple of years I've fished a couple cups each fall, so potentially, a couple more tournaments there. It's just a lot. And I've got a 3 and a 5-year-old. So, you know how that is, dude. It's just mayhem at the house. Yep. So, I like to, it's nice to be able to get home. If I'm gone for 10 days or 12 days, it's nice to be able to get home for a week or at least 3 or 4 days to spend some time with the kids, be a part of their life. And, I'm already gone a lot, so it would just be really hard, especially coming from Arizona. The travel too, logistically, it's almost impossible to drive home after every tournament back east already. So I'm booking flights and leaving my rig in crazy places, and trying to ship tackle out and do this and that, and it's about all I can handle at this point in my life doing one tour. But you never know down the road. I mean, I would love from a fishing standpoint, I'd love to do it. But from a lifestyle deal, I just couldn't pull it off. I don't think it'd be mayhem.
It sounds like there needs to be more big tournaments out west to make your life a little easier. Like I think that bothers a lot of bass fishing fans, is the fact none of the major tournament trails go west, like, ever.
It'd be amazing if there were 1 or 2 a year. I mean, I've literally never in my whole life had a tournament on a home lake. We had one Elite Series tournament at Havasu, which is still 4.5 hours from my house. So it's relatively home. It was an amazing thing for me, but like,
You
dude,
still
I
have to
mean,
book a hotel or campground or an Airbnb.
yeah. And just to have an advantage from a fishing standpoint, right? Like, I mean, I love fishing back east, and I have the option to move back east, and I could do it. So I can't, I have this conversation with Justin Lucas all the time, and he's like, if I start complaining like I am now, you guys are being nice to me, but if I start complaining, he goes, you could move to Alabama like I did, and I'm like, you're right. So it's my choice to live out here, and that's where the tournaments are at. And but hopefully one day we start to see a few more, man. It's far for a lot of the other fishermen to go. It's far for the league to go, and there's more that goes into selecting lakes too, and a lot of the lakes in the central part of the country and the southeast, they welcome bass fishermen with open arms. And not to say that they wouldn't do that out here, but I just don't know if that's really been on the table, and if they would or not.
Sure. And I mean, another thing too, and it's cool to see, I'm curious to see with Rick Pierce kind of backing some of the stuff with some of the Western Championship stuff that's going to happen this next year and taking from all these different leagues, right? There's a lot of different leagues out West. And it's not like we don't have the bodies of water necessarily. There's a lot of great fisheries, big bodies of water that are generally, though, around less populated areas, right? There's just less people. The more Western states you go, there's just a lot of areas that are not super populated. And I think that a lot of times when it goes into making a tournament lake decision, right, having a municipality that's going to support the tournament organization is a big deal. And Josh, like you said, it may not just, no one's ever thought of it necessarily from that standpoint when it comes to some of these smaller communities on these kind of middle of nowhere places.
It's a great point, Adam. And that literally, I mean, when they're looking for good lakes to fish, I know all the circuits, they want good fishing, but right up there with good fishing is like, how good of a business decision is this? And is there, what does the money look like? And that's just the bottom line. And that is what it is. And it's really hard, in the world we live in today, with all the uncertainty of tomorrow in the crazy country we live in. Like, if you can get money to go somewhere and you have to go somewhere and get no money, it's hard to, why would you not go where there's money? So it's a challenge, but I'd love to see it, man. And I feel like eventually it will happen, but it's going to take some people to really, really go above and beyond to make it happen at first.
For sure. Well, Andy, I guess you were talking about the schedule for next year. So it sounds like Josh, just fishing the BPT, which I like all your points there on doing that. As far as the schedule goes, what are you looking most forward to? And I've got it pulled up here, but what event?
So when I look at the schedule, a lot of times I instantly just go to the end of the summer and see where we're going to fish for smallmouth, because that's my favorite thing. And we're going to Mille Lacs, so that's going to be awesome.
Yes.
I'm really looking forward to that. It's been since 2017 that I was there last, so that'll be awesome. The first tournament's going to be awesome. And part of that is we're going to new bodies of water. We're going to a couple smaller bodies of water in Monroe, Louisiana.
Yeah.
All I know about these lakes, I'm going to start doing my research here pretty soon for tournaments next year. All I know is there were monster bags that have been being caught over the last handful of years on these bodies of water. And they're just new. So new is cool, man. I mean, that'll be awesome. It's a good, solid schedule throughout the whole course of the year. Cayuga up in New York is awesome. I've never been to Lake of the Ozarks. I've heard that out of the Ozark lakes, that is the lake with the best quality of fish, the most big largemouth. So I'm looking forward to that, even though it's full of docks, and I despise dock
Pleasure
fishing.
boaters.
Yeah.
Well, at least you're there at a good time of year.
But yeah, I'll make sure to watch the Ozark show on Netflix, the new season, to get myself warmed up for that when it comes out. But dude, it's a good schedule overall, and hopefully I can be in the mix at the end of the year when we go to Mille Lacs and have a good tournament there and end it out on a good note for sure.
Awesome.
Heck yeah. No, I think it's an incredible schedule. When this got released, I was thinking, man, this is gonna be awesome. You have a mix of some old favorites, right? Like Lake Fork at a great time when the fishing should be just awesome. And then you have a bunch of these other lakes mixed in, small lakes, and then even Watts Bar in June should be awesome. An offshore deal there.
We'll do
So
a fish fest. Yeah, people are going to get tons of fish. It'll be fun.
yeah, yeah. That's awesome. And it's loaded, man. So should be a good time.
Yeah, yeah. I'm glad you think it's a good schedule. I do too. I think it'll be really fun and different lakes. Some years you look at the schedule and you're stoked. You know exactly how all the tournaments are going to kind of fish, right? And this is one where it's like, well, there's a handful of new ones there, so it levels the playing field a little bit, and it's new and exciting for everyone to watch.
For sure. For sure. And man, and I almost wonder too with it. I like how the BPT goes to some of these smaller locations and these smaller fisheries. Do you feel that maybe a rookie coming on from the Tackle Warehouse Pro Circuit that isn't necessarily I shouldn't say that Tackle Warehouse Pro Circuit guys are super far traveling, seasoned anglers, but with some of these other bodies of water, do you feel that there's a little bit more of an advantage to those going to those up and coming anglers versus maybe another tournament series where it is locked in? They always go to the same places over and over.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. If you don't have much experience, you said it right. Like these guys have experience, right? But if you are a guy that's young and you make it in, and you're 25 and you haven't been everywhere 10 times, like absolutely a new body of water. You actually have a clean slate, and in our deal, there's no information, right? So it's your personal experience and what you can find on the internet, and that's it.
Sure.
So, the body, like the Louisiana lakes, Watts Bar, those are tournaments that we haven't been. I mean, like you take Lake Chickamauga, we've been to Chickamauga the last 3 years. So if you've never been on Lake Chickamauga and now you're going to come fish against a bunch of wolves that have lived at Lake Chickamauga for the last 3 years, good luck, So it's definitely new bodies of water or a clean slate for everyone. And I think even a lot of the experienced guys love fishing new lakes.
Yeah.
I talked to Skeet Reese about it, and dude, he just wants to go to new lakes. He just wants it's fun to go to a new lake. There's no feeling like launching your boat on a body of water for the first time and not having any clue what to expect or what direction to go or knowing. It's just, dude, it's fun. And it's one of the things we all love about bass fishing is the curiosity of what this lake's got to offer, what kind of fish are in it, how do you catch them? And, I mean, you go to a lake that you've been to a million times and, okay, well, it's summertime. These are the 4 places where typically it goes down, and there's maybe a chance one person in the top 10 can fish somewhere else. Other than that, you're going to have to bully your way in and fish this spot. That gets old. So it's definitely cool.
It's a breath of fresh air.
No doubt, man, for sure. And it's cool to watch too. Like, I mean, hey, how many, and that's one of the things that would be cool about coming out west. I think the viewership there would be bodies of water that no one's ever seen before. And I think people would think it'd be interesting to see how you break down these bodies of water compared to the same old lakes back east.
Mm-hmm. Now, I wonder if this is another major factor in why they don't go out west is cell coverage, because everything is alive today, right? Yep. Some of those lakes are so remote and desolate away from population that there's just not cell phone service, so they can't physically pull it off. You would have no live shot.
Yes, for sure. And yeah, that's for sure, man. Half the lakes out here are desolate for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, but it would be cool just to see them go to like a mead in a big tournament setting. Yeah, the wind blows all the time, but that'd be just an awesome.
Oh, dude, it would be, and it'll happen. It will happen, but it would be different. I can promise it'd be different than any tournament we've seen.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, and I think there's ways around some of that too. I mean, I agree. It's super handy, and there's the need. I think technology is getting better and better, and you've seen that with the BPT and everything as far as the cell stuff on guys' boats and having all this. I think that's going to get better and better on coverage. And I mean, we've seen Elite Series go to Lake Oahe. I spent a little bit of time on that place at a Bass Nation event, and it is desolate as desolate gets, man. I mean, it is similar to a lot of these Western lakes where it looks like a, up there it's kind of pastury desert, but it's in the middle of nowhere, man. And there's very few population.
And you can't make it. And the stat units are amazing. Like, you're totally right. You need the service, but Oahe, we fished Sam Rayburn this year, and dude, I mean, there's times where you launch your boat on Rayburn and you can't get a call out or a text out all day. It's impossible. And we fished it, and the stat units were good enough to make it work. So it's amazing what they can do to boost the service, but it's a factor for sure. And it's something they got to, they have any lake that they think they're going to fish, they've got to survey it. And they drive the entire rim of the lake from one end to the other. And they would have to do that first for sure.
I see. Okay. Looks like we got a couple of Max Scent questions here. So T Chang's wondering, what Berkeley soft plastic bait does Josh see going into the Max Line Scent?
That's interesting, man. Well, I mean, this is the newest one right here. This is the Chigger Craw that everyone loves already. Chigger Craw in Max Scent. It's amazing. It's interesting. It looks a little different in the water than the power bait Chigger Craw. They're both great. But you put this thing on the back of a jig or on a Texas rig, and it just looks a little different. I'm loving it. I'm catching a lot of fish on it. I'm trying to think of what would be a cool one to do next that we don't have now.
Pit Boss?
That's like my favorite regular power bait shape, dude. So, Andy, I think you're onto something there. That would be interesting.
Well, the only reason I say it because I pointed out last time, but I see 5 packs there, I think, of having.
Yeah. What else do we have? I mean, dude, anything that works in power bait, I mean, it probably would be a little bit better in Max Scent, right? Worms are awesome. I'd love to see a big power worm. We've got a couple worms that are already in the Max Scent, but I think the power bait would be awesome. We're doing tubes now, which are awesome for smallmouth. We're doing some smallmouth tubes. So, and there's Joe right there popping in. I see that. It's hilarious, dude. Hey, and I like throwing a tube, but it takes a lot to get a drop shot out of my hand, man. I love drop shotting so much. I need someone to hit me in the head with a hammer and be like, put it down, pick up a tube for me to throw a tube over a drop shot. So if you're go ahead, Andy.
The tube conversation, a lot of people have put the tube away for a Ned rig.
I throw a Ned rig a lot, dude. You hear the tube's amazing. People have won millions of dollars on tubes, but every tournament weigh-in, there's a guy complaining about all the fish he lost on a tube.
Yeah.
And I'm like, not me, dude, because I was doing something else.
Yeah.
No, that's Josh, it was kind of, you're saying, I feel like part of the reason, and this was my first time ever going up north. I fished the Open on the St. Lawrence this last year.
Nice.
On those bodies of water, but like the drop shot is so efficient from a fish catching standpoint of getting that fish in. I know you're on light line and everything else, but as long as you are in open water, it is a good land percentage compared to a tube, especially a heavy tube, like a big heavy tube on a casting rod. Yeah, you can wind them in, but there's just a lot of leverage with that big thing for some reason. I agree. I've seen some fish come off on a tube for sure.
Always. That's why I use the Ned rig instead.
It's a good point, though, Andy. I mean, hey, what does a tube do that a Ned rig doesn't? Not a lot, right? It's very similar. It's on the bottom. It's in the rocks, and you just got a little bit more gap there on the hook. And boy, they just love that. Whatever your Ned bait is, they love little general or whatever it is. They love a short little stubby bait. Smallmouth just love that.
I think
that's 3-inch minnow and Max Scent there, Joe. That's a good one, dude. For sure. I like that. Yep.
It's good stuff.
One of my favorite baits.
Yeah, I think it is a little bit of a different plastic. Do you have any insight on that, Josh, as far as?
I couldn't tell you the science between either one. I just know how they fish and the benefits of both, I love that 3-inch minnow. It's one of the baits that I still, gulp's a pain to deal with, man. I mean, it dries out. It's not like one of the beauties of Max Scent is it never dries out. That scent stays in it forever. It fishes more like a standard plastic, but I love that 3-inch minnow. the Gulp minnow. I just love it. I throw it all the time. You know, I'm doing some crappie fishing even coming up, and I got 2.5-inch Gulp minnows loaded up and ready for that. I took my son up to the lake the other day, and we're doing this spooning, and there's treble hooks and hooks all over these spoons, right? And I'm like, that's I don't know if I will trust him. He's 3. I'm like, I don't know if I trust him with all those hooks. So I took just a straight like you know, a ball head jig or whatever the type of jig head, whatever it's called that you would use on Demiki rig where it stands out sideways like that. It's escaping me right now. But I put a 3-inch minnow on that, and he did some work. Pretty good for a 3-year-old, just dead sticking that thing in the schools of fish that I was jigging my spoon. So it's just such a good bait that just catches fish everywhere you go. I mean, if there's a top 5 of smallmouth baits of all time, that's in it for sure. But I mean, I was catching largemouth on it the other day.
That's awesome. No, that's a fish catching fool, dude. When we were struggling at Havasu, that is what we found, that we could catch smallmouth.
Oh, wow. Interesting. That's cool.
Yeah. And it was like that. And then also those big red ears and everything else.
On a drop shot or what?
Yeah, on a drop shot.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. But it was, I mean, in watching them on live scope too, we had a really hard time getting fish to eat. And it was a 3-inch, the Gulp minnow, which, like you said, I love them and I hate them. I hate running down the lake, making a long run and being like, well, this one's dried up, but it works flat out.
It's still one of the baits that I go to, even as amazing as Maxon is. I still throw it. An emerald shiner, just like Joe said there. I throw smelt sometimes, but emerald shiner, it is, if I'm having a tough time, that's what I put on for sure.
I'm going to go out there and throw my favorite Gulp bait. It's the fry.
Nice. That's the old school one, dude. I don't know much anymore. That's good.
Like I probably have like 20 packs of them, and I always have them just in case they stop eating everything. Like I'm just gonna try to throw a fry, and I can always pick up like a 5-pounder on it. I'll get one bite, but it'll always be a giant. Always.
Wow. There's something special about it. I couldn't tell you what it is, why, but they just bite it.
So I bought all of mine, I think, like 6 years ago on Tackle Warehouse. They put them on sale because there was like a short period where they discontinued them. So they went on sale. Really? I bought a bunch of them. They disappeared for like 4 years, and then they came back.
That's cool.
So like I have this huge stockpile. They're still good. I think I'm down to like 4 or 5 bags.
Oh man, yeah, you might need to order some more. You know, Max is so good. You just never know like when something like that is going to go away, right? Because it's like, and who's still buying them? But it's still catching fish like crazy.
It's literally like the toilet paper of the world when it comes to like pandemic stuff. It's like, all right, everyone load up. Here we're going north. Like you better.
Thank goodness flatworms are coming back into stock like in regularity, because I was starting to get a little low, man. Like I got 40 bags of flatworms, and I was feeling a little like worried that I wasn't going to be able to buy anymore. So like, I was like, oh, it's gonna be a rough end of the year, and then they all started coming to stock. I'm like, thank goodness.
That's cool. Yeah, I'm glad to hear that they're loading back up. Yeah, people go nuts over it, and rightfully so.
It's good. It's real good.
Heck yeah. Well, Andy, man, I think we start wrapping things up. Did you have anything else you wanted to go into with Josh here on the schedule next year?
I guess one off the wall question would be, what are some of your big plans for 2022 off the water? Well, off the pro tour.
Great question. Yeah. Dude, you know, that's a good one. Okay. So for me, I've got, it's, you know, just as a dad, right? It's a big year for my kids. My daughter's going to school. They're starting to get into sports and stuff like that. So when I'm home, it's going to be really trying to push that and help them with that as much as possible. You know, as far as like, again, I guess off the water, that's like the biggest thing, just try to do well there, you know, keep everything really tight. You know, this year, you know, I hate to bring it back to tournament fishing, but I was not as sharp as I should have been. And there were a lot of tournaments where I was like, would end up having an okay tournament, you know, maybe make the first cut, but not make the second cut, or leave some points or a better finish on the board from not being sharp. You know, just maybe one thing a tournament, dude, where you miss one extra fish, but it's stuff that you can control. So I definitely want to make sure I'm just a little bit sharper on all those things. And that gets down to literally every little thing, man. Maybe eating a little bit better, maybe exercising a little bit more. It keeps your mind a little bit sharper. Sleeping a little bit better keeps you sharper. Working, not being lazy when you're working on your tackle and saying, oh, I mean, it was good enough for my last cast. It'll be good enough for my first cast, that type of stuff. So just sharpening things up on that. But other than that, man, just trying to have some fun with my kids and get them out on the water, get them, busy in sports and stuff, and having a good year.
Awesome. Yeah, now my daughter will be 3 next summer, so I think it's gonna be the first year I actually like take her out fishing on the boat.
It's a
I
good
got
age,
her
dude.
I got her on the boat this year, and all she wanted to do was hit the horn. So like, we're going down the Erie Canal, and then she got terrified of it because it was so loud on my Triton. It was hilarious.
Man, dude, I'll tell you, my son goes in my boat and burns up my cranking battery about 3 times a week in the garage because he just goes up and down with the trim, hits the power poles, turns the graphs on and off. So that you probably got some more time of button pushing, but I agree. Like three is a good age to where they can actually like focus on other things going on, and you could be out there for a few hours.
Exactly. So when we took her out there, all she wanted to do was like try to jump in the water and hit the horn button and try to drive the boat. Like that's all she wanted to do.
That makes sense.
I left all the rods at home, took all the tackle out. I was like, we're just gonna go for a little boat ride down the canal.
It's great, though. Yeah. You'll remember that day forever.
Oh, it was wild.
That's awesome. Little kids and I don't have any kids.
Enamored.
I just feel enamored. I just love watching how little kids can find the simplest thing, and just make it the most fun. Like there could be a crawfish pincher in the live well, and they're like, "Oh, this is it. This is all I need."
So my daughter's a foodie. She loves food. So like we get on the boat, we start driving. She's like, "I want a snack, Mama." It's so funny.
You got to bring the snacks.
Always. Like if we can't go anywhere without a snack. So
no doubt.
Yeah, it's fun. Deacon, you'll know what that pain is like one day.
One day. Uncle Adam. That's right, Joe. There we go. Lifetime uncle. I'm just kidding.
Nice.
And well, Andy, dude, I'll let you wrap things up and ask kind of the final questions. I know Josh has been on the show before. How did you want to wrap things up, Andy?
So I guess, is there anything that you want our viewers tonight to know about what's going on, maybe like your own podcast that you have going, or if you have anything else in the fishing industry that's happening around you personally? If you want to give like shout outs now, I guess this could be your time for that, and then we'll wrap it up.
Thanks, man. Yeah, I mean, obviously, if anyone wants to learn more about whatever we're talking about, ask more questions, feel free. You can find me on Facebook or Instagram at Josh_Bertrand Fishing. And then, if you're a podcast guy and you have time to listen to another podcast, if you're not already listening, mine is called Anglers Happy Hour, and we talk some nuts and bolts, but a lot of times it's just random. Whatever, we call it English Happy Hour because it's like the conversation you'd have after you get off the water when you're at the bar with your buddies. And it's a couple of buddies and myself. Sometimes we get guests, sometimes we don't. But we talk serious fishing one day. The next day we talk about, some disaster that, my buddy Nick had in his personal life, or, maybe Rob's hunting, just whatever it is. And
sky's the limit.
Yeah, dude, we've got a good one coming this week because Nick had been bass fishing down in Mexico for the week. Right. So we'll have some good stories. Everyone loves his Mexico episode. So, yeah, man, if you guys are interested, it's called Anglers Happy Hour, and you can hear it. It's audio only. It's on iTunes and Spotify.
Awesome.
Yeah. And huge shout out to that, guys. If you're not already listening, I listen to every episode, Josh, and it's just a great time, dude. Yeah, and I just love putting it on, especially like a long drive. It's just you're in the middle of a conversation. You can just tell genuine best friends chatting, and it makes it really fun. And there's absolutely tidbits in there, man, of juice fishing wise. And then you just love hearing the train wreck that Nick has going on that week because
he's a great
awesome.
guy, and he's a really smart guy. He's got it together, but like he just seems to find himself in a pickle like every day. And like we almost start every episode off with like, okay, what happened to you this week?
What's
dude?
the pickle?
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
Are you going to make it home from Mexico this week? We're not sure, but here's how he did
he's
it.
still alive. Thank God he's still alive. Every time he goes, I'm like, I hope I see him again, man. The way he does it's amazing. It's amazing. But sorry.
And he always has a
He's
story.
a
I'm
goofball,
sure.
He does.
Always.
Love
it.
It's awesome.
It's the best part.
Well, thank you guys very much, and
Yeah.
thanks for having me on, man. It means a lot. You guys are doing. I mean, I'm amazed at how good of a job you guys do at putting everything together, and you put so much work into it. The quality of the show is so good, and you guys are awesome hosts.
Yeah, we appreciate it, and
thanks,
I had to give Bailey a big slap on the back because he's the main driver of this. So as I know Deacon's quite busy, but I got my 2-year-old that I'm constantly chasing around over here, so it's fun for sure. So, but thank you as well. I wish you a safe traveling 2020 and the utmost success through all your tournaments and endeavors through the year. So, and stay healthy, of course. Yeah.
Likewise. Thank you guys very much.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
And then just one final quick note here, Adam, before we finish. I know we're doing a Hobie eyewear giveaway coming up here. I believe it starts tomorrow. Look for the details in the morning, and then there's also going to be a really fun Santa suit smallmouth beatdown that me and Bailey did on the Niagara River. So it's about 18 minutes of just pure joy and laughter. So I hope everybody tunes in and watches that video tomorrow. Josh, I think you'll get a kick out if you get it.
I saw the teaser on Instagram. So
it's hysterical.
It's cold.
In the first few minutes, Bailey's yelling at me because I was like, I'm not putting it on until we catch a fish. So, and then it was just madness for an hour and 45 minutes.
Oh, yeah, nice.
Yeah, it was fun. So, everybody get in on that giveaway. There's multiple ways. It'll be announced in the morning. So, but thank you for everyone for viewing, for tuning in tonight and listening all the time. We appreciate it greatly. So, it also helps out our great guests like Josh, so we have more viewership and following. So thank you again.
Absolutely.
So for now, we'll see you guys next time.
See you guys next week.